I awake to the presence of God. No other presence exists for me. As I arise, I commit my heart, my mind, my soul, my body, my affairs to God. He will direct the unfoldment of life. Whatever I think or say or do, He will inspire. Whatever I touch or taste or smell, whatever I see or hear, He will infuse with His living presence. Together we will move in love and light and peace and joy and power, in grace and beauty. Together, in constant communion, we will attend to His affairs. I am alive with the presence of God. No other presence exists for me. Blessed are those who can rest from speech to dwell in a holy silence. Blessed are those who can rise from thought to the fullness of pure knowing. Blessed are those who, detached from deeds, can rest in their own true being. I awake to the presence of God. No other presence exists for me. As I arise, I commit my heart, my mind, my soul, my body, my affairs to God. He will direct the unfoldment of life. Whatever I think or say or do, He will inspire. Whatever I touch or taste or smell, whatever I see or hear, He will infuse with His living presence. Together we will move in love and light and peace and joy and power, in grace and beauty. Together, in constant communion, we will attend to His affairs. I am alive with the presence of God. No other presence exists for me. Blessed are those who can rest from speech to dwell in a holy silence. Blessed are those who can rise from thought to the fullness of pure knowing. Blessed are those who, detached from deeds, can rest in their own true being.
Alrighty. So, all right, now Karen will give one of her stellar biographies of Arnavaz.
Hey, Papa. Can you hear me, Betty?
Yeah.
Okay, great. And I also, if there's any problem with our connectivity, I will very quickly move to another place, but hopefully it'll be okay.
Good.
What a gift. And her book is here, Gift of God. And for many of us, knowing Arnavaz was a true gift. Arnavaz Nariman Dadachanji was born on March 15th, 1918 in British India. Her parents were Naroji Dadachanji and Bakamal Minu Omji. She had a number of siblings, Nargis, who many of us got to know, Huma, Temtan, and Nozar were four that never married. Dara, her brother, married Franey, their children, Nozar and Mera. We know her as Mera Busfield. Rhoda married Jamshed or Jimmy Mystery, and their children were Merwan, Framrose Falu, now chairman of the trust, and Sarosh. She married on December 21st, 1944, Nariman Dadachanji, They were fraternal cousins. Their mutual uncle was Chanji, Baba's secretary. Arnavaz died on February 18th, 2009 at Merazad. She was cremated, and in the Merazad garden, there's a small gravesite for her. Arnavaz first met Meher Baba when she was 8 years old. Baba said the meaning of her name is Gift of God, which is the title of her book. In 1924, when Chanji began to follow Meher Baba, the Dadachanji family was worried. As Zoroastrians, they thought there was only one God, Zoroaster, but they wanted Chanji to be happy. In 1927, her father, who was a building contractor, was asked by Baba to construct a hostel for an engineering college in Pune. Arnavaz was 8 years old when the family went to stay in Pune. Chanji was very anxious for them to meet Baba. Baba told him to ask us to come to Mehrabad for a picnic lunch. So she was real excited for the picnic lunch. They rented a small bus, and Baba was waiting for them when they entered the Dharamshala. She wrote, "From the moment I walked into the room, my eyes were fixed on Baba. The impact beloved Baba had on me was so strong that today the memory of first meeting him is still fresh and alive." When the project was completed, her family left Pune and returned to Bombay, where they lived in Chanji's apartment. From 1928 to 1933, Meher Baba often stayed with them. On one visit, Nariman, her paternal cousin from Karachi, was also there. This was Nariman's first meeting with Meher Baba. Arnavaz was 10, Nariman 15. In 1928, her father, with the men Mandali, constructed a cinema in Nasik. Arnavaz went to Nasik during her school holidays. In 1929, Arnavaz met Mera and the other women Mandali for the very first time. She fell in love with Mera on first sight. She remembers Mera and Naja from that very first meeting. In 1934, Arnavaz was first in her class at school, but Baba said he didn't want Arnavaz to continue with her studies. This was her first order from Meher Baba. She was very disappointed. Then Baba said she could take 1 year off and then return to school. She passed her classes and was able to return to school. Baba then said not to go to university, but he permitted her to take a teaching course to become a teacher. Arnavaz began night classes and she taught during the day. Nariman came to Bombay to complete his paperwork for travel to England. He was going to continue his studies in Manchester, England. He chose this school because it had the best course in chemistry. Arnavaz enjoyed Nariman's company, but she had no romantic inclinations and thought he understood that. Her greatest desire was to lead a spiritual single life. She simply wanted to have Nariman as a friend. In 1938, Baba again celebrated his birthday on a grand scale in Mehrabad. Goher and Arnavaz traveled together. This was the first time Arnavaz stayed on Mehrabad Hill with Mera and the women Mandali. Later on, Arnavaz became very ill. She was mentally and emotionally drained. She developed a high fever and was moved to a hospital located just below their apartment. The hospital was run by Dr. Alu Kambata, who later came to love Baba. Because her illness left her in a weakened state, the doctors suggested she leave Bombay and go to Panchgani. She was thrilled since Meher Baba was in Panchgani. Since Goher had a summer vacation from college, Baba told Dr. Goher to come with her. Nariman's brother Behram accompanied them. Dr. Goher at that time had tonsillitis, so Baba sent her back to Bombay to have them removed. From that time on, Baba's sign for Goher was to put his hand on his throat, indicating tonsils. As Arnavaz was leaving Panchgani, Baba said, "Whenever you get holidays from your teaching, you must come and join me wherever I am." From then on, she began staying in the ashram whenever Baba called her. This meant a full month in October, 2 weeks in December, and 2 months in the summer. Because teaching older students was taking its toll on her health, she then studied the Montessori method. She became a Montessori teacher, teaching 4 and 5-year-olds. She enjoyed this tremendously. She was given the gift of writing to Baba weekly. His replies held within them the answers to her heart's questions. Since Nariman left for England in 1937, they continued to correspond. Even though he had 2 years to remain in Europe, Baba had him immediately return to India. 2 months later, Germany invaded Poland. Arnavaz joined the Blue Bus tours for a time. In 1939, when Baba wasn't traveling elsewhere, he came to Bombay and stayed in their new apartment. He told her parents never to move. This is the apartment in Bombay that many of us stayed in when we first came to India in the 70s. Baba didn't return to Bombay until 1947, 8 years later. During her April 1940s school holidays, she joined the Blue Bus tours again. When Baba called her to Bangalore, he called her for a private conversation. He used the alphabet board, not gestures, and said, "Would you like to marry?" No, she only wanted Baba. Baba said, "If I tell you to marry, will you obey?" She said, "Yes, of course." "Will you marry the man I want you to marry?" She said, "Yes." Baba said, "Nariman?" She said, "Yes." She left teaching and she got a job at a veterinary hospital looking after birds and dogs for 1 year. She left in January 1942 when Baba called her to travel with him and the men and women Mandali to Dehradun for 3 months through March. Near the end of March, Baba asked Arnavaz to take a nurse's training course to assist during the war, which she did. While waiting to be called for duty, she helped Chanji, who was writing Baba's biography in Gujarati. During the time she was seeing Nariman, who had returned and established his own business, American Color and Chemical Company, Nariman wrote to Baba asking permission to marry Arnavaz. Baba fixed the date of their engagement and gestured he would put rings on their fingers. Later, she realized how he had blessed them to love and serve him through marriage. Margaret Krask helped Arnavaz with her makeup and finishing touches for her engagement party and then for her marriage. The wedding was held on December 21st, 1944. As a wedding gift, Arnavaz received the first photo of Mera ever given to anyone as a wedding gift. Baba told them to find their own apartment. In 1945, with the war on, housing was difficult to find. One day, a friend of Nariman's brought him to see an apartment. It had been owned by a Maharaja for his English jockey, who came for 4 months of the year. The apartment was fully and tastefully furnished. Ashiana, the name given to the apartment, means nest. Margaret was their first of many guests while she waited for passage to England. Baba often came and stayed at Ashiana. He brought Mera and the women, had private interviews, and gave darshan. Once to around 2,000 people, that's a typo, I don't know. On August 15th, 1949, Baba declared his plans for the new life. They were devastated. The thought of never seeing beloved Baba again was unbearable. Since Baba did not want any property to remain in his name, at that time Mirazad was transferred to Nariman's name. Along with the transfer document, Baba gave Nariman the silver locket and key from the opening of the bungalow. Nadja and Katie were sent to live with Arnavaz and Nariman during the new life. When Baba and those on the new life came to Bombay, they were allowed to bring food for them. Arnavaz and Nariman planned a trip in 1951 to Europe to see places Baba had been. Surprisingly, Baba called them for a visit, so they shortened their trip. In 1952, Baba made plans to travel to the US. He stayed at Oceana and other places in Bombay prior to the flight. Arnavaz writes about Baba's hesitancy over the flight to the US. She vividly remembers their return to Bombay after the accident. She cradled Mera in her arms. The 50s were a time of much activity for Arnavaz and Nariman. Ashiana had been kept under the previous owner's name. He was living in Czechoslovakia. In 1950, he periodically sent notices for them to vacate the apartment. Legally, he could not force them out. In 1952, Nariman sent the landlord a big bouquet of flowers and a Christmas cake. He transferred the tenancy into their name and later came to love Baba and would come to their landing to see him whether or not an invitation had been extended. Often Baba would tell them no one should know he had been in Bombay when he stayed with them. Once Arnavaz had to tell her sister-in-law no when Nariman's brother had seen him in the car. Arnavaz was the first person to receive a letter written by Mera. It was the first letter Baba allowed her to write. In 1952, Nariman purchased a Chevrolet from Sarosh. Baba sometimes used their 1952 Chevrolet. On December 2nd, 1956, Baba with 4 men Mandali, Erich driving, Vishnu, Pendu, and Dr. Nilu, using their 1952 Chevrolet, swerved out of control. That was the car that was in the accident in 1956. The insurance agent had been for Baba's darshan, and Nariman had been doing business with him for many years. In the end, the insurance company gave 2 times the value of the car and paid far beyond the policy's coverage to take care of the medical expenses of Baba and the others. When Baba and the Mandali came for medical treatments in Bombay, they stayed at Ashiana. Baba gave Arnavaz a copy of God Speaks with his own hands. The next day, he asked for it back so he could give it to someone else, and she was devastated. But the following day, he gave her a copy again of God Speaks. She immediately wrote on the inside page, "This God Speaks was given by beloved Baba." In a strictly confidential letter dated 10th January 1961, Baba requested, "If Mera survives Meher Baba, Arnavaz most of the time to stay with Mera and now and again pay visits to Nariman. Nariman can come and again pay visits to you." 5 months after Nariman completed the sale of his business, although they kept Ashiana and periodically spent time in Bombay, they lived in Mirazad most of the time from then on. Along with Dr. Goher, Arnavaz assumed responsibility for the running of Meherazad, since there were no Baba lovers to help and very few servants at that time. Baba once said that he and Mera were their children. Arnavaz always held that very close to her heart. Arnavaz later wrote, "Baba has sent young people to all of us with their questions about marriage, sex, work, family, living in the world while trying to obey Baba and pleased him." Arnavaz fulfilled this role for all of us perfectly. In 1965, Meher Baba sent a birthday telegram to Arnavaz. My love and blessing to you, who are one of the brightest jewels in my divine treasury. Give my love to my dear Naraman, who holds this jewel to his heart in trust for me, Meher Baba. Jai Baba.
Wonderful, Karen. Boy, we know her life now, thanks to you. That's wonderful.
Thanks for the opportunity, Jai Baba.
Before I open up for sharing, I thought I would play a couple of clips. There are audio files of her talking. The LA group has a wonderful gallery of archive, and so I just thought I would play just a couple of little clips that seemed interesting.
Half an hour in the ashram and outside the ashram. Those who stayed in the ashram, also there was a fixed time.
Sorry, I'll come back.
This is what I think. This is my explanation. There was a time when Baba wanted us to meditate for half an hour in the ashram and outside the ashram. Those who stayed in the ashram, also there was a fixed time. At that time, there were about 35 women, Easterners and Westerners, and they were all staying at Meherabad. So a bell would ring, and everyone would be ready within 5 minutes, would take their respective places and meditate upon Baba for half an hour. Then there would be a second bell, and then everyone would get up. So that was how it was. Now again the same problem was with most of them. Most of the, even in the ashram I'm talking about, most of the women also had the same problem. So for some time they bore it up, and then one day it came out from one of the inmates, says, Baba, it's really very funny, I'm busy all day long and I can't think of anything, but when I sit and meditate upon you, I think of Hitler and Mussolini, because at that time the war was going on. I mean, during the daytime I wouldn't even think of them, but when I sit and meditate, I think of those silly leaders, Mussolini and Hitler, and I don't know what to, I can't control them. I can't control my thoughts. Baba would just smile and say, don't worry. It's like that. But then, at that time, they were thinking of such funny thoughts. I mean, thoughts which had no concern with one's personal self. And yet, like that I talked about that lady. I mean, she was such a sweet lady, such a loving lady. I would call her a pious lady because she led her life, she devoted her life to God. And when she came in contact with Baba, and she devoted herself to Baba, and then to her husband and children, and one would not even dream that she could ever have those nasty thoughts. And they started coming to her. And mind you, even after Baba embracing her and telling her not to worry, the thoughts continued for nearly 2 more years. There are some who just say that God does everything. So whatever we do in all our actions is because God wanted us to do those actions. So we naturally put the whole thing on God. I mean, God means Baba, that well, like one boy who said that, well, if I take drugs, I want to love Baba and I want to take drugs as well. Because what I feel is that it is Baba who wants me to take drugs. I can't stop taking drugs. So naturally it is Baba's will that I should take drugs, because I can't help myself. So there have been many such questions. that whatever God does, I mean, everything happens according to God's wish and will. And of course, Baba has said that everything is done according to my wish and will. And he has also said that not a leaf can move without my wish and will. So some do misunderstand. Misunderstand in this way that as far as they say that everything is God's wish and will is right. But then Baba has also said that hold on to my Dharman. Do what I say. Have faith in me. Surrender to me. Why would he say all these things? If it was only due to, if it was only God's wish and will. So once Baba was sitting in a small group and he was in a good mood, and somebody brought a jar, a big plastic jar of sweets. So Baba took that jar and kept that jar on his lap, and he opened the jar and he gave sweets to all, distributed the sweets to all, and then the jar was empty. Then he was explaining something, that reference I don't remember, but then he said, he opened the lid, that was the red lid of the jar, so he opened the lid. Then he said, to open the lid is in your hands. To fill in the jar is in my hands. So you see, when God-man is in physical body, he wants us to give our hand in his hand. If we just stand straight, not lifting our hand, and we want Baba to help us, Baba said, I cannot help you. You must give your hand in my hand. So we must extend our hand halfway, and then Baba takes our hand and takes us along wherever he wants to take us. He wants to help us more. Otherwise we go on our destiny way. Destiny is there. The world is run on destiny. Everyone has their own destinies. So what is the purpose in God-man taking the physical form? There should be a purpose. And the purpose is that he wants his close ones to take on a short route, on a shortcut. But we go on a destiny way. So how can we go on a shortcut? But he knows it. So if we give our hand in his hand, he takes us on that shortcut.
So, that beautiful voice, my goodness, what beauty. She really personified beauty, I think. That was on to the next one. They're wonderful. That gallery is just so full of, that was Hoshang and Hawobi. Also, Hoshang is related, I believe. He's a Dadachanji. And all right. Well, now I'd like to open up for any sharing you have of experiences with Arnavaz or comments. And I would ask people to raise their hands. And I find the easiest way to do that, if you would like to share, is to go the reactions button at the bottom of the screen. If you click it, and then you can click raise hand, and uh, that's an easy way to raise your hand. So, Karen, do you want to start? Prime the pump?
Well, I can start unless there are other people who have stories that they want to share. Um, in the event there's not, at this point, I'm happy to. I have many memories of meeting Arnavaz. I'll start with a few. It must have been in 2004. That would have been the trip because that was the time. And I was working at the time and working through a process with the state of California to get the course I was teaching certified, so it could continue. And it was very much on my mind. And I never shared anything about it with Arnavaz. And I was at Merazad and we were just passing by. And she said to me, to not leave any stone unturned. And I've always remembered that when I've had to deal with certain things, to never leave any stone unturned. I had the excellent, very good fortune to be one of the women who was permitted to stay with Arnavaz when she was quite ill. There was a time when her health was so poor, and Shelley would invite women to stay for periods of time. And so a lot of us got to really have that honor. For me, it was a very special time. The first time I stayed was 3 days, and I stayed, I believe it was Rano's room. So I was really close to Arnavaz. Each evening, she would ask to watch Baba videos. Sometimes we would watch a movie together, but just being in her presence, and Shelley would come to give her medications and care for her so lovingly. And those have always stayed with me. The second time I had to call, it was like a few days later. There was a break, but her health had really gotten much more serious. So I had to call to find out if I could go again and stay there. And Shelley said, yes, I could come, but this time she would stay at night close to Arnavaz. And I stayed where Devana and Casey live. So that was another treat. I remember I had a cough and I was so nervous and so worried that I wouldn't be able to stay. And I did see Dr. Ann, and it wasn't due to a cold or anything like that. It was probably the dust, an allergy. And so if I was with Arnavaz or other people were there and I felt the need to cough or anything like that, I would run out, get some water, and hurry back because I wanted so much to be there. Before I actually left for India at those times to be there, my good, wonderful friend Louise Barry had been also one of the women staying with Arnavaz, and she was so great. We had like an hour phone call or whatever, and she told me like all these things to know and all these things to do, which really gave me more confidence when I was there. After she passed, I know Barbara Katzenberg was the woman at that time who was with her. And she passed in February, but they must have had the 1-year anniversary of her passing in December, January, because that's when Alan and I typically were there. It would have been December. And they, at that time, I believe they had set the gravesite for her, and it is in the Merazad garden. So if you're at Merazad and you're walking through the garden, you'll see this very beautiful white with lettering, little headstone for her. And she is the only one of the women that are at Merazad. And so they were going to place it. And so I guess her ashes were at the bottom. And then people were putting flowers on top, and Devana came, and Devana so sweetly, and I was with her, and we remembered the names of each of the women that had the honor and privilege of staying with Arnavaz, and we would take flowers and put them down below with Arnavaz's ashes, and then it was covered. So each year that Alan and I have gone back, I always, when I walk through the garden, look for that particular space because of Arnavaz, because it's not as simple to find, but it is there. And I recommend when we all start going back there to pay respects. Okay, I think that's about it. She was so wonderful. You could talk to her about personal problems, and having been in the world and living in Bombay, she truly could tell us things that were specific to her, and her beauty in the slideshow that we saw, her beauty and her radiance. She radiated Baba's beauty and Mira's beauty. So, Jai Baba.
Thank you, Karen. And now your hubby has something to say.
If I'm allowed, I have to get permission first. Well, to kind of finish the story about the entombment of Arnavaz, which I was going to end with, but since Karen started it, it was interesting. As Karen mentioned, she was there taking care of Arnavaz. Actually, one day I was allowed in, and on the slideshow you showed, there was some pictures of her in a room with various people. Mara and Lori Bloom were there, and her two nieces, Meher and Gulruk, and we were there at that time.
Mara Bloom. Mara was there.
Laura and Mara.
Was
Yeah.
Okay.
See, I have to get permission to talk. So maybe Karen can mute herself for a minute.
No, because I forgot to tell that. That was so beautiful. But thank you, Alan. Go ahead.
Mhm. See how far I get in the next paragraph. Anyway, so I was very, very nice. And Cindy Lowe sang a song, I recall that. And Arnavaz was quite lovely, laying in the bed. She kept saying she was going to be 92, although I think she was going to be 91. It was very funny, or 92 and 93, whatever it was. It was somewhat of an argument. But she kept saying, this is all a dream. He was so beautiful. This is all a dream. You have no idea how beautiful he was. And then the next year, as Karen mentioned, and I don't know exactly what date it is, they had this entombment. And we were there at Mirazad that day. And I think Avovi asked Karen and me to come. And we felt quite awkward. It was the entire Dadachanji family and the Mandali, such as they were. I don't know who was, no, it was only Beirut was left. Karen, you can go on mute if you want. It's possible. In any event, the only, we were kind of the outsiders, and I think I said something in the vein, maybe to Hoshang. I said, you sure you want us here? And they said, no, you, and Avovi said, no, you and Karen are part of the family. I was very touched. And there was about 25 people there, I should say. And each of them put some dirt in a little grave site that Karen mentioned. And that grave site is, if you're at Baba's room, just keep walking straight into the garden, and it's pretty much there. Right there out on the, but people don't tend to go to that part of the garden. Anyway, everybody put some dirt into this little entombment site, and Karen and I were the last ones. In fact, I was the last one. I felt, wow, there's a black sheep in every family. But in any event, backing up where I wanted to start, in 1977 and 1978, I was starting law school, or after my first year of law school. I was not married. And I went for pretty much the whole summer to India, which was interesting. And there was a lot of people there each time, because it's the summer, there's a lot of teachers and such there. And Arnavaz would call me over. She would sit at the end of the seating, far down towards the bathrooms where Falu always sits, if you see follow there at all. And she would call me over like this, like wave me on. At first, I didn't know what was going on, but then eventually it occurred every day, and I would go over and sit with her. And I would sit for a couple hours, and she would talk and tell me stories. And God only knows, I wish I had taped something. And I would just sit there and listen to her. I didn't have a lot of questions, and we would laugh a lot. And she was like an aunt, you know. I always used to laugh and say I wanted to be a Dadachanji. It's a family standing on the shoulders of one person. He says, you want to be a mystery, you don't want to be a Dadachanji. Mysteries are better. But in any event, so this occurred day after day at Marizod. And I remember on a few occasions, Erich came out. I was the only Westerner outside Mondeley Hall. And the door would open and Erich would come out. He would say, Alan, what are you doing? Come in the hall. And I'd have to, we were about, 30, 40 feet away because he was at the door. And I'd say, Arnavaz is talking to me. And he would say, come in the hall. And I'd say, but Arnavaz is talking to me. And she was so sweet, how she had nice hand gestures. She would look at me and go like this. And she'd go like that with her hands. And she had this very cool expression, doesn't matter. For those who remember, it doesn't matter. And then she would go like that, and you go, and she said, and then she would say kind of under her breath to me, says, we'll talk later. So then, we, after lunch, you had some break time and before you would go see Mara, and she would call me over again. So this happened every day. I'd spend sometimes 3-4 hours a day with her. It was very neat. She was like my buddy, and we had so much fun. This went on in 1977 for weeks, in 1978 for weeks. And I can't remember a thing she said. It doesn't matter what she said. Probably told me the same stories over and over again. It's just that she was so much fun and so loving and so sweet. And I truly did feel like her nephew, the Mystery Boys. I was very good friends with Erwan at that time. Of course, I'm friends with all of them, but it really touched my heart. I guess she was kind of making me valuable to be a decent husband, although apparently it's up for grabs whether that's come to pass or not. We'll have to get a vote on that later. But in any event, I have nothing but the greatest love for Arnavaz. She was a sweetheart. Having spent hundreds of hours with her, what more can I say?
Thank you, Alan. You and Karen provide us great amusement here. You too. I'm not seeing any hands now. I know some of you have stories, but did I just see one? Yes, Gabriella. There you are.
Oh my goodness. So, I, Alan, you are so blessed to have had so many, many hours with Arnavaz. I also had many, though not quite to compare with that because it came later. But every trip I came, I used to come once a year for a while. She always called me over, same gesture. Thank you for reminding me how she would gesture. And we'd usually sit down by her room, although not always. Sometimes we were sitting up near the hall. There's that on the terrace. Sometimes she would sit there. And she would always want to know what's going in my life. And I would start. I wouldn't get too far because then she got the whole picture. I didn't have to say much. And then she would start explaining what I should do and what I shouldn't do. And sometimes she asked me questions. Like I remember once she said, well, do you love him? It was about a relationship I was in. And the guy was really actually a bum. I mean, I'll tell you now in retrospect. But I said, I did love him. So I said yes. And I'm sure she knew, what was going to happen later, but she just let it be. She was she was very of the world, in that way that Baba made her of the world. And so I could talk to her about anything, and she always wanted to keep up with me. And after my accident, she would give me more attention because she felt there was like different kinds of needs that I had to deal with than I did when I was walking. So I did tape some of it, and I've got three pretty decent tapes that I'm going to send out to one of the people that's doing archives because I'd like to pass it on. But I did this morning. It's not of a quality that I could play it, but I thought I would read just a little bit from one of her with the things she said to me. And this was not necessarily a personal thing, but there were a few of us around. She's speaking. He says, "Try your best and leave it to me." Because you see, when we do something, we always expect a result. There's a beautiful saying of Baba. The trouble with you is that you don't leave everything entirely to me. If you leave everything entirely to me, the responsibility is mine. Isn't that beautiful? But there's a big but. Try your best. This is like the jar, right? Do what you have to do and leave it to me. And I said, yes, this works against our natures. And she said, when we come to Baba, we have to work everything opposite to our natures. Then we can become closer to him. Because how can he wipe out our sanskaras? We bring so much of muck from the past lives, and then we develop in the present life. So Baba wipes out in the past, in the present, and in the future. And wiping out sanskaras, they are such a part of us that Baba has to pull it. And that is pain and suffering. It is not that he wants to give pain and suffering. He does not want to give pain and suffering, but it is only through pain and suffering that our sanskaras are being wiped out. He is an ocean of love, compassion, mercy, but he has to do his work. And this is the work. Most of the suffering he takes upon himself. That's why they come down. Why do they come down every 700 years? They can just sit in infinite God and let destiny take its course. No, every 700 years he comes down to give a push to the whole universe. What is that push? He takes the burden upon himself so much. In his very words, he said, I suffer so much that I just give you drops. So can you imagine an ocean and a few drops? So even those few drops are so much to us. So can you imagine what the ocean must be suffering?
Thank you, Gabriella. So good that you had the presence of mind to tape. Yeah, wow. Wonderful. Thanks. Anyone else? Judy's sending you a heart there. Mahu. Let's see, where are you, Mahu? Mahu? Are you? Oh, can you unmute, Mahu?
I thought I did. I did put the cursor there, but apparently I didn't push it hard enough. I'm saying there isn't anything, mine's is, for me it is a special, and I've already shared it last year. I hope it's not repeated for some people. But anyway, these are all precious. before actually I talk about Arnavaz, I like to share that what I have recently learned about Mandalis from Baba, and that is when, you know, somebody asked him that can anybody who are in, you know, advanced soul and you know, higher consciousness can be considered as a Mandali, or would you choose them to be Mandali? And Baba says, no, Mandali is people who gives their life to me. They give their life to me, they listen to me, they obey me, and in you know, and they don't ask for any reward for the obeying, and they don't care about any result. They don't care whether their life is ruined or they don't have any, or they're not prosper, and so forth. In fact, Baba uses this Persian word called khushi, means happiness. He says they don't care about their khushi, all they care is about Baba's khushi, or which is happiness. And also later on, he mentions that Mandalis are people who are intimate with me. They are very intimate. And so with that introduction about how someone to be considered to be a Mandali, also I just remembered another time Baba said, Mandalis, each one of them are part of my body. One is mouth, one is nose, one is ear, one is head, one is hand, one is feet, and each play the different role that I have considered for them, divine will. So I think in terms of Arnavaz, here for me, of course, you know, it all also has to do with our past samskaras and connection with them. So they reveal themselves to us in that manner. You know, with Arnavaz, if this book, Gift of God, that Nashwan printed, and of course now is out of print, and Nancy Wall and another person put it together, I forgot the other one, editor. It's the most amazing book, and I read it a while ago, long ago. And of course, when you read that book, you do see that how her marriage was arranged marriage by Baba. And at times he was unhappy because her self and her identity as a woman was kind of buried. You see, so she had this juggle between obeying Baba and what Baba had considered for them, and the role that Nariman and Arnavaz played as part of Baba's universal work, and what she wanted to do. Even sometimes she wanted to leave her life behind and just join Baba in his, you know, with Baba and his ashram and so forth, and would write a letter to Baba and says, oh, Baba, I want to fly to you. I want to fly to you. I can't take it anymore. Anyway, so she had that. And of course, based on this, she had her connection with me is she was my marriage counselor. It was in, you know, like long ago where my acceptance wasn't, thank God, as much as now, my surrendering to Baba. I was questioning that, why do I go to India? And at that time, well, I was going almost every year. I had a little, my son was quite young at that time. And why do I have to take my son, take all of this on myself and go, and my husband is not coming, and you know, like that. So it was part of this baggage what I was carrying on my shoulder. As I will go to Merozat, people question, where is your husband? You know, where is this person? Anyway, so one time I sat down and I talked to her, and she was holding my hand the whole time. And it was as she talked, she talked on behalf of Baba, because very clearly with two sentences, it's just like that baggage went completely away. I asked that question, by the way, from Bauji when he was coming for LA Sahaba several times. That didn't do the job. Maybe I was a better listener at that time, but Arnavaz said, what did she say? She said, how this could be your business? It's absolutely none of your business. He is Baba's child. Your husband is Baba's child, and when Baba wants to turn the key, he would turn the key. And you just have to just observe and surrender. So that was it. When she told me that, it just completely, I came to the very peace of mind. I never questioned. And of course, my relationship with my husband improved enormously because I was trying to change him to become a Baba lover. But that doesn't work this way. Anyway, I think he's a very great Baba lover because he took care of my son ever since that I was able to do service for Baba and work for center. So without even questioning a word. So anyway, yeah, and another encounter, I had with Arnavaz, at that time in the beginning, we were on fire, just wanted to move to India, live in Mehrabad. I was envious of some of the resident Mandali. I wanted to live. And James Cox was selling, some condo at that time with a very good price and so forth. And I was ready to buy. But I asked Arnavaz in one of my visits to Merazat, and she told me, she didn't tell me yes, or she didn't tell me no. She just said, just know that if you are destined to come and move to India, Baba provide every means for you to live here. You don't have to rush into it. And now I know why. I was not supposed to be in India. Anyway, so, I just feel that, and the fact that every time we had a Merazad visit, they would sit in a veranda, in front of their room, ready for us to go to them and greet them. They were just eager. They were just so eager, so enthusiastic to help us, I felt, always around Mandalis, and particularly in this case, Arnavaz, because I felt through this, they wanted to serve their beloved. And this was also their opportunity because they were living the secluded life in Merazad and so forth. So there was a lot of opportunity for us to learn from them, and still we are learning. Jai Baba. Thank you.
Oh, what a wonderful sharing, Mahu. Thank you so much. Oh, wow. All right, Judy.
Hey, Baba, everyone. And celebrating Arnavaz. What a wonderful thing to do any day of the week or year. Arnavaz was so special and so humble and unassuming. And of course, all of you know these things, anything that I'm going to say, because you were with her, and simply being with her spoke volumes. And I had the great good fortune of being with her many times over many years. And one thing I observed was what an important role she played. And Mahu, you just highlighted that with your share. The marriage counselor role, but not just for people that were married. She was the one resident woman mandali at Marazad that had lived out in the world and was married. So she had that and was involved in businesses and things in the world that the other resident women mandali were that had not been their direct experience. And so she was so helpful to so many pilgrims who could come to her. She was so accessible and open and so forth. And she was also so deeply insightful and deeply intuitive. And it was my experience that she knew everything that was going on in each person before they said anything. So when you came up and said anything, it was like that was filling in, that was putting color on the already black and white, like in a coloring book. She kind of knew the story before it had to be expressed. And she was so generous with her time, with her presence, with her love, with allowing Baba's love to flow through her. And she had a number of different quotes that she so often shared with me personally, but I would be present when she would share that same quote over and over to other people. The number one quote of Bob, and by quote, I mean quote of Baba's, that she shared with people, which has been very important for me personally, especially when Baba shifted my life back to the West. Whatever situation you find yourself in, think it is I who have placed you there. I'll say that again so that I can hear it. Whatever situation you find yourself in, think it is I who have placed you there. And the second most on the list of Baba quotes that I heard so many times from Arnavaz was mentioned earlier. I think it was Gabriella. The trouble with you is you don't leave everything entirely to me. And that was the shortened version of what Gabriella read from the transcript of the longer talk. And I've also found that to be so helpful, kind of Baba slapping my hands of trying to take over the reins of my own life, because I have this illusion that that's my job. And, it's like not my job. He's already got that position filled. And I only get myself in trouble when I do that. There's one thing I think that Karen included this in her bio, but if that's the case, it for me deserves some extra focus, and that is that Nauroji Dadachanji, Arnavaz and Rhoda's father, was an architect. And in 1938, Baba asked him to design a dome for the tomb that was being built in that year, where his body would lay. And he gave Nauroji instructions on including the four symbols of the four religions. And the dome itself is within the Buddhist tradition, that's a representation of the body of the Buddha. So you've got the these other, you know, the religions there, but it's really Arnavaz's father that gives us that beautiful, beautiful dome we call his samadhi, that I bet is so precious to every single one of us. It certainly is to me. And Nauroji, I think, doesn't get nearly enough credit for his unique contribution to our Baba world, as it were. And on a personal level, which I can't even really explain, you know, these kind of things are too hard to put into words. But for me, simply sitting with Arnavaz, and we spent a lot of time gazing into one another's eyes in silence. And I found in her eyes depth that went on and on. I felt each time as if I was looking into eternity, which I experienced as looking into Meher Baba's eyes, that it was utterly endless. And Baba's presence was so strong and so beautiful and so unexpressible. And that, for me, is Arnavaz. Jai Baba.
Lovely, Judy. Wow, what a beautiful share. I had no idea that story about the Samadhi dome. Wow. Wow, what a what a bountiful share on many levels. Thank you from the heart. All right, now Elisa's next.
Thank you. Well, thank you all for sharing so far. Judy, that was really beautiful. And Gabriella and Mahu, I mean, I think they're all just, I almost feel like just saying ditto because truly each one is capturing so much of the experience that I think we all had with Arnavaz, those of us who were fortunate enough to spend time with her. For myself personally, I think, you know, when you're saying that about looking into her eyes, Judy, that does, it just brought back sitting in Arnavaz's presence was, she was unique among the women Mandali to me in that she had lived in the world and she had been married. And being a therapist myself, I felt like she was Baba's therapist, you know, and there was that bond between us. I felt like she always symbolized to me the inner essence of what I wanted to be able to be in working with people that Baba sent to me. So she was sort of like a role model to me. And my relationship with her was, she had this, I always felt with Arnavaz that she really wanted to spend time with me. Like with the other Mandali, I was always so shy and I, you know, didn't want to take up too much of their time, or I was worried that, you know, I was doing something wrong or what. But with Arnavaz, it was like, I felt her love for me and her desire to spend time with me in a way that was actually pretty profoundly healing for me in those early years, because I had a lot of wounding that I was working through. And I just felt like she just wanted to spend time with me. And she always sought me out and she always would, you know, have me sit and tell her things. And if I didn't tell her all the stuff, it was like, I think it was Judy who was saying that, like she knew what was going on. And it was like if I did, when, you know, I would tell her some bits and then she would keep asking me questions, or she would say things that would just unlock, you know, like she took a particular interest in my relationship with Robert because she knew Robert. She knew Robert from after Robert met Baba, he went and stayed at Ashiana for, I think, several weeks before he left for America. And so she she knew the things that were hard, like, and she had so much empathy for me, and gave me so much support. But she would often say to me, when things were really hard, and I felt like I needed to leave my marriage, and she would say, but don't forget, you will go from the pot into the frying pan. And that was something she would say to me, but remember, you don't want to go from the pot into the frying pan. So stay close, let Baba guide you, she would say. But at the same time, she would say to me, I know, Robert, I know. And so it was just her empathy and her support was just tremendous. And one year when I was there, I had been going through a difficult time with my sister and my mother, and I came to India, and I was just so full of pain and wondering what I had done wrong, and I just was giving it to Baba. And she said one thing to me that stays with me till this day. She looked at me in the eyes and she said, so soberingly, she said, you have done nothing wrong. You have done nothing wrong. And it was just this beautiful release of, like, as it's happening, Baba is doing this work. You just allow it to be. And it was, so she was that to me. She was like a, like a mother figure, and really, I felt, took me under her wing a lot, and was very loving and supportive. And when she got ill, and Karen was talking about going, Shelley had called me and said that when Deb Smith was leaving, she said Arnavaz had mentioned me as a person, and she called me and said, would you like to come stay? And unfortunately, I was in the middle of, like, my kids and work, and like, she wanted me to come stay for a period of time, like long period of time. But as it is, I went and I stayed for, I think it was like 5 weeks or something, 4 or 5 weeks. And I did stay in Merazad, and I was one of the first people to take care of Arnavaz after Deb Smith. So there was no protocols at that point. And actually that's when Louise was the second, and she came, and we overlapped for a couple of weeks, so we were able to really support each other. But it was kind of being, but I had so many beautiful times, because I got to really just be there with her, and, like, have breakfast with her every morning, and sit with her in the afternoons and watch movies, and and just listen to her share stories, and sometimes just sit with her, and she was going through a lot of different things. But some of my wonderful memories of that time was saying the prayers with her in the evening. Shelley would come in, and we would say the prayers together before she went to bed in her room with her. And that was extremely special. And just being at Merazad for that time, I stayed in the Ruhimani's office with Casey and Devana. So it was just such a beautiful time to have that time, because it was, it was my last time with Arnavaz. And then she died. When she died, actually, she died on February 18th. And in America, it was February 17th, which was my birthday. So it was the night of my birthday. And I had this beautiful dream after she died. And so I just felt like it was, that connection to her was just very deep for me. So she's a very, very, very special person in my life. So thank you.
Oh, you were so fortunate. Thanks, Elisa. Wow. Yeah, must have been meant to be special. Now, Darius is asked to share. So, are you there, Darius?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Jai Baba, Betty, and everyone. My story about Arnavaz is hopefully a very short one, and it is triggered by something that Mahu said. She used the words "turn the key." So I'll tell you a story about my dad. So my mom first came to Baba. She met Baba in 1941. And of course, because she was sort of the head of the family became Baba followers, all of us. I wasn't born, of course. And I was the last child born in my family, and I was born in 1954. My dad followed along with my mom, sort of, half-heartedly, saying, okay, he's human. I will respect him like I respected Zarathustra. So he's a prophet. Okay, but the whole thing about him being God was beyond Dad's capability of understanding. And but for my mom, I mean, the moment she saw Baba, he held out his hands, and that was it. For her, there was no doubt that is God. So my dad would half-heartedly, yes, he would pray. He would say Baba's prayers, artis, whatever. And I don't know any of this because I wasn't born at the time. So I was born in 1954, and I was a very sickly child. I was in hospital pretty much from birth many, many times because I had meningitis, encephalitis, brain tissue, etc. So my dad was very nervous. I was his pride and joy. I mean, he was 47 years old when I was born, so made him strut like a man. So he, at that time, and I don't know exactly where or what, I must have been between 1 and 4 years old or something. So in the 50s, right? I'm not too sure when exactly, but Baba had a sahwas. I don't even know where, but he told all his Baba lovers to come and to leave. He said, leave your families, leave your jobs. Don't worry about it. I will take care of every single thing. Just have faith in me and come. Leave everything and only I matter. So my mom, of course, all set to go and ready, and she packed up everything, and it's all set to go. My dad was like, oh no, I can't leave the rise. He's still got fever and stuff like that. And the only grown up at home was my 12-year-old sister and our nanny. So he said, I'm not going away with it. So mom finally, of course, mom was a very strong woman, very great willpower. So somehow she convinced him. She said, no, you have to come and you have to trust him and you have to have faith. So my dad, being the mild tempered person, said, okay, I'll come. And he went along, but all the while, every single minute, this is his story that he told me. He said he could not stop thinking about me. Now, once they were all there, everybody was there. I'll just digress for one moment. We lived very close to Arnavaz, Nagesh, Nauroji uncle. When I say uncle and auntie, it's just because in India, anybody elder to us, we call it uncle and auntie. So Nagesh auntie, Rhoda auntie, all of them stayed very close to us. I went to school with Sarosh, Falu, Merwan, all of us. So we were very close. But more often than not, we would visit them because Nauroji uncle was in bed by then, bedridden. So we would visit them, but they would only come to our house if somebody was ill or they had some work with my mom, who was an insurance agent, etc. So very rare occurrences when they would come. And especially Arnavaz auntie, she didn't live there. Only Nagesh auntie, Homa, and Nauroji uncle lived together at that time. So anyways, suddenly it seems Arnavaz auntie arrived a little bit late to where this sahwas was. First thing she did was walk over to my dad. And she said, I have something to tell you. I have something to tell you. So Dad said, what? And she said, I don't know why this happened. I got into the car and I told the driver we're heading off to, well, Pune, Ahmednagar, wherever this thing was. But I made him turn the car around and I went to your house. And I went in and I met Zareen, my little 12-year-old sister. And I went to Darius, and Darius was doing fine. I was a toddler, so I was toddling around, playing with his toys, having a great time, no fever, nothing. So my dad said, but why did you go to our house? I mean, if you understand where they lived, you just come out of the driveway and you turn right and you're straight on off to Pune. So this was in the opposite direction. So Arnavaz auntie said she never ever understood why she did it. But my mom said that turned the key. From that day onwards, my father had full faith in Baba. So that's my story about her.
Oh.
It was a lovely little one, but yeah. Thank you guys for allowing me to share that.
Beautiful story, Darius. Thank you. Oh, that was lovely. Anyone else? I have a clip of Jeff and Nan talking actually a year ago at this meeting, and I thought it was a good one. So maybe I'll share that with you. Oh, wait, Alan's got something to say.
I was reminded when Elisa was speaking of Ashiana. My first trip to India in '73, I went back and I was there for a couple of weeks around Thanksgiving, and I returned with Marshall Hay, the late Marshall Hay, Craig Smith, Debbie Peterson, and Kitty. And I'd become friends with Meron Mystery, who was trying to go to the US at that point. We spent all day at the American Embassy for him to get his paperwork. He was going to go to medical, or his, not medical school, but what follows thereafter. And we had lunch at Ashiana, which was across the street from the American Embassy. And it was the only time I had a chance to meet Nariman, who died just a few months later in 1974. But that was some lunch. You had Nariman, Arnavaz, Kitty, and the rest of us. And I can't remember who else was there. I was just so impressed. I thought, like, how did I squeeze into this crowd? I've always felt that, man, when you're around the mandali, you gotta just grab it, because as Elisa said, they were busy people. And Arnavaz seemed to be the one, as she mentioned, and I was touched by it, that gave time to people. I didn't have any problems that I was aware of. I just spent time with her. She just was kind enough to spend time with me. I guess she felt I needed something or other. But that was a very precious moment, having lunch there. I wish I could recall what we had for lunch, but it's not important. Anyway, this is a very nice talk about Arnavaz. What a sweetheart she was. Really blazing right in my heart.
That sounds so special. Wow, I can almost picture it. Wow, thank you for sharing that, Alan. And we have Rosalie.
Hey, Baba. I think a lot of things at these kind of gatherings. And one of the things I think, because I could see so many people and I know they have things to share, and there's a lot of silence and, maybe thinking it's not important enough or whatever. It was too short. It was too this. But I think all the time we had with Mandali, it goes out like that drop of water thing. It's like, I was privileged to be around Mara. She was my favorite one. But what can I do but share that? How was it me that was around her? And then it goes on and on and on. But with Arnavaz, I remember going to her once because someone said, oh, you can talk if you have a problem. You can go to her. So I went. I didn't usually like to go to the Mandali to say I have a problem, because then I thought, if I open to that, I'll have to be of like mind, like you're right. The only one I ever went to that way was Mara, because I didn't consider her different than Baba. She was so Baba that I felt I could go to her. She knew my heart. But I went to Arnavaz. I can't tell you what it was. Somehow I thought it was a problem. And that was like before this century. That was like 1988 or 1987. So then all this time passes an eternity, right? So I'm there in the 2009. So she's not talking, Arnavaz. Most of the time she was in bed, because I went in to see her for whatever reason. You know, I mean, she's Mandali, you know, she's suffering physically, you know. So I went in, there was a caretaker there too. And I just wanted to sing her my favorite song, which is Ishtiake. You know, it's like, it's just such a sacred song. And I thought I'm going to sing that for her. So I sang it, and it was silent. I always loved singing it. And then I left, whatever. And then the next thing I knew, maybe it was a couple of weeks, I don't know. That was my last time in India, this lifetime. And all of a sudden, Alan Wagner's made chocolate cake because Arnavaz passed away. And I'm sitting there eating my chocolate cake. And then he says, everyone can go. We're going to have a bus going to Mirazad. Everyone can go. She's lying in, you know, in front of Baba's chair. So, so I went on the bus, and it was so interesting because somehow, you know, you get these things in your head. I wanted to be there when one of the Mandali died. And now I almost could have been there for Padre's cremation. I mean, it was like two ships passing in the night. And so I could be at this cremation. But anyway, the hall was jammed, you know, people passing. And of course, she always looked beautiful. She looked beautiful dead too. She just, Arnavaz looked beautiful, you know. And then I remember the cremation. It was joyous. I didn't even know they cremated right there at Mehrabad until I found out. And flowers, so many flowers people placing on her. And then the heat of it, and the really kind of a sweet, sad ecstasy of it, you know, someone that was close to Baba, and, you know, and then is gone on. And anyway, I'm grateful that Baba let me see a cremation. I'm grateful for all of my contact with every Mandali, whether I liked it or not, because some experiences I didn't like, but still they had that grace to be Mandali. And I got the grace of getting enough money to get over there. Because if you're not affluent or whatever, you can't just come and go, you know. So and I love that they were so generous with us and kept the price so low, you know. I mean, I could stay there like I was a queen, you know, for $5 a day, everything, you know. And that always spoke to me so deeply, you know, just how precious Baba is to each one of us, and that we all are God. Baba says we are him. There's no separation. So sometimes, and a lot of times, we have to be slapped. We don't get it. But I have come to teach. I have not come to teach, but to awaken me in you. Anyway, I'm grateful, and grateful for all the sharings. And I would just encourage people not to be timid to share, because that's what we have now, sharing. Baba, Jai Baba.
Oh, Rosalie, thanks. That's so true, isn't it? That we get to spend time like this. remembering. It's precious. Thank you so much. Let's see. Maybe we've. Now, I looked at last year's meeting and I thought that Jeff and Nan's sharing was interesting. So if you'd like, I'll play that. And if anybody else comes up with a share, just raise your hand or chat me. Okay, it'll take me a minute to call them up.
Mikhail, did you have your hand up for a moment?
Oh, Mika. Oh, well, are you
Okay. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone. I had it for a moment because I really didn't have much contact with Arnavaz. But there are two things that are strong in my mind. When I read her book, I understood how I thought or I felt that she actually didn't want to marry her husband because she wanted to be married to Baba. I mean, like a nun, you know, and to be part of that. And it was very, 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 very hard tearing for her to accede with what Baba asked her to do. And of course, it was wonderful for her after that because she could serve Baba so much and the Mandali women when Baba wanted to air them out and he would bring them to Ashiana and tell Arnavaz to take them out and for movies and for a good time. And also, I've also felt that when Baba actually held the rings of their marriage, he was marrying her. He was being like answering her need to be his nun, you know, and that's what I felt, you know, that's my feelings. Another thing is, if I remember right, but I'm not sure if I remember right, that he was also holding the marriage dress that she was wearing later on. So in this way, he was participating completely. And it reminds me also of Brabazon, that at the end of his life, he said that he wants to marry Baba as well. You know, when we fall in love with Baba, everyone wants to marry him. Everyone wants to be with him. And we are, and he is accepting that in us, to be wedded completely to him. So another thing is that I remember when Mera had a birthday, Arnavaz brought her a very, very beautiful sari, pink sari, which is very, very beautiful. And Baba said to her, you know, you put it on Mera, and then after that, you take it with you and you wear that. So she was, actually, these are all signs for me, how close she was to him. And also how close she was to Mera and how kind and how supportive when Mera was grieving so much, and how much she supported her and loved her, and how much she needed that, because so suddenly Baba's immediate attention on her, immediate flow of love on Mera was sort of taking a backseat, you know, not a backseat actually, but that's how Mera must have gone through that and felt that. So Arnavaz was streaming this love back on her. So these are things that I was impressed. And another thing is that I was so touched with all the shares here, because I really didn't know her. So I came here to hear about her and to hear how people who were close to her and experienced her. And it was so moving, each story and each share here. And about her shrine, I did get to see her shrine, because I used to be so shy in Merzad and so shy of the Mandali. So I would always go on the backside and immediately off the bus and backside and into Baba's room. So when you go that way, you pass by her shrine. So when I'm here, and I used to take care of the shrine, so I'm very close to that feeling, and I still keep that very strongly here in Israel. So when I think of the ladies and think of the shrines like I'm coming to visit them from here in my mind, in my mind's eye. I always go also to hers when I go from one shrine to the other of the ladies on the hill, which are so, so beautiful, each one of them. Then I also pass by her shrine. But when I pass by her shrine, it always takes me to Marazat, to the place where her shrine is. So, so thank you, Arnavaz, for bringing so much love to Baba, so much love to Mara, so much help to Baba lovers, being such a shiny being. And her book was just wonderful, because when in her book, she was so open about things that not are always so nice, you know, like previous books were sort of hiding things that making the picture nice, but she was so candid in everything. So it was really, really wonderful to read. And also that she was the first Mandali to really talk out about the occult and how dangerous it is to be using the occult. And that is also one of the things that she worked with and wanted to inform the West about. So thank you all for your sharings. I was crying and touched in my heart. Thank you all. And thank you, Arnavaz. And thank you, Baba. Thank you, our beloved, who is so, so beautiful. And what shiny souls. I always feel that he brings them with him. Not that he found them in the world, but he brought them. They all came as volunteers to be with him and to work with him and to help us all in his work and in the things that we will be meeting in our life and in our world before and now. And yeah, Jai Baba.
Oh, thank you, Mikhail. I'm so glad you spoke up. Good. I'm good. Judy, I'm glad you pointed her out. You have your hand up, Judy.
Yeah. Oh, thank you, Mikhail. That was lovely. And I want to echo what others have said. All of the sharings today have been really heart-touching and wonderful. And I remembered something that I intended to put in my first share, which, and Mikhail, what you just emphasized about Mehru's, I was just talking with Mehru Bilmoria's son. Arnavaz's emphasis on the occult was something that it was a theme. It was an important theme, and it was clear that she almost felt like a messenger that was needed to deliver this message to so many different people that I sometimes was assisting Arnavaz and so forth. So I was nearby many times when she was letting pilgrims know, either individually or in a group, about staying very strongly away from occult practices and so forth. But the other theme that I found sort of equally as important to her, that she emphasized over and over to so many different pilgrims or residents, and also in her book, which is so beautifully written, and is that the theme of detachment. And she came by that theme in her own life through so much suffering, through so much loss. She confronts the many deaths in her family that, almost all of her closest relatives, of course, her sister Rhoda was there at Marazad, at Mehrabad for many years, and then her final years at Marazad. But most of the other family, the Dadachanjis, she lost so many close relatives, and spoke in the book and then spoke in person about loss, and that Baba emphasized the need for detachment. And for myself, I've found, again, that lesson in particular so helpful now. Actually, it was just a couple of months ago that I lost my only brother. And Arnavaz's message of detachment, which I tried to begin to cultivate in my, sort of kindergarten way earlier. Anyway, these things bear fruit for us. And that's a message that I think, especially as we're all growing older, is so helpful, whether it's that we're losing others, we're losing abilities and capabilities that we've had all our life, or eventually we're all going to go to Baba ourselves. But Arnavaz's emphasis on detachment, I think, is a great gift for all of us now, and when she gave it out now and also in the future. So, Jai Baba.
Thank you, Judy.
Betty, can I just share one quick thing? I just was thinking of it when Judy was talking about, all that she had suffered and what she went through. One of the things I recall her saying quite often toward the end of her life, when I would sit with her, she would talk about how, Baba had made her go in and get married, and she didn't have that desire, but she was obeying Baba, and she was just doing that. But I just remember her saying, just, I'd gone all through that and all of those years. And she said, now I'm here and I'm so free. She said, I'm so free, like all the family stuff she went through. And she just said that so many times. I remember just like that, how free she was, that it made me feel that sense of how it's all just an illusion. And we just wind up back at his feet, so she felt that so strongly toward the end of her life.
Wow. But she had accomplished her mission. She had done, you can't have that freedom if you hang on to what you want.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
She did as Baba wished her to do, and he gave her such freedom at the end. Yeah.
Mikhail.
Yeah, I just want to echo on that, because what Judy said, and you continued with the theme of Baba taking. When he takes all, first of all, I think he's gathering so many souls now, and that's a blessing for them. He's gathering them now just into his embrace. So we should be happy for them, for each one of them. And although those who are staying here yet have difficult time in their saying goodbye and being, without, that's hard, and that is a lot of love sent to them to embrace them. But that he frees us in our life. He's freeing us in our life. So we should say thank you, because he is freeing us from relationships and from this. He's just taking away all these things. So we'll be lighter. And we are, because he does that for us. So each time we are facing that, it's hard, it's tearing, because we are holding on to that. But when he just takes it away after a time, like you said, Elisa, it's freeing. So we should see these things as freeing, and we should be very happy for all the people that he's taking now. Really happy.
Good reminder, Mikhail. Thank you. That's so true. Yeah. Well, we managed to almost fill a couple of hours going, folks. I'll go ahead and play this. It's a short clip from Jeff and Nan, and feel free to leave if you need to. It's been a wonderful time. thanks so much for coming and, joining. Thank you. And don't hesitate if something comes up to your mind, just just speak up or raise your hand. All right, let's see now. Wish me luck here. Let's see. Here we are. Okay.
Well,
Yes, most of
you know that Baba had asked Arnavaz to be the person people in the Bombay area to speak with when they got into problems, when they had problems. He designated her to be that one. And naturally, in the early years of going to Mirzad Mehrabad, I would go every year. And in the early years, back in the early 70s and everything, I was always having one problem after another. And of course, I, I would invariably, Arnavaz had a way of getting everything out of you. And, but with great acceptance, back in my early years, I was into, you might say, I was thought of the spiritual life as self-improvement, improving and improving. And I would come to her with a lot of my problems, my personal problems, and she kind of conveyed this acceptance. And I actually found she kind of, what can I say, she instilled in me a sense of self-acceptance. And I found self-acceptance was so much closer to Baba than self-improvement. Self-improvement is a future thing. Self-acceptance is in the present. She was very wonderful about that. And as you all know, she really was very accepting of the whole range of human experience without judgment. I didn't feel that. And so she was a beautiful thing that I found with the Mandali, and especially her, is when I first met them, they responded to me as I had always known myself, and yet they were just meeting me for the first time. As I had known myself my whole life, that was the one they were responding to, and they were just, so they must have, say, tuned into the essence of who we are, and they didn't have to have all the details. They were connecting, and that's what we kind of knew about ourselves. But there were a couple of sayings, of things that Baba said to her that were very helpful in my life. And one was, I didn't ask you to feel me, I asked you to love me. That had a deep meaning for me, because in my early years, I felt when I wasn't feeling Baba, I wasn't loving him. And I try to get that feeling back. And I realized that I had the love there even if I wasn't feeling it. And that was to make the distinction between feeling and love. In other words, so for example, I might be feeling very depressed, and someone gets in an auto accident right out from the house, and I'll run out and help them and get them to the hospital and everything. It wasn't dependent upon my mood or how I was feeling. The loving response came from a different part of myself. And the other quote, that something Baba said to her that has been invaluable, and I've had to suffer this, the truth of this is a very unfortunate truth, where Baba said, "It is nothing to give in when you are wrong, but it has spiritual value to give in when you are right." That was a hard one. That has been a hard one. It is nothing to give in when you are wrong, but it has spiritual value to give in when you are right. And that's very hard lesson. It's hard to know that you might be right in the situation, and yet you have to give in. just for the harmony or the peace of a situation or the preserving the love in the situation, you may have to give in even when you're right. And I know a lot of couples know that lesson many times over. Anyway, those are, but what, I mean, the Mandali were just, they were, you might say, a practical or what, a visible human example of how Baba wants us to be. You know, very personal, connected, interested, engaged. They could have gone off after Baba dropped his body and just been alone with their thoughts of Baba. But they took that one pointedness that they had put on Baba all those years, they turned that to a bunch of ragamuffins of us. And we got that intimate attention. So anyway, that's what I have to share.
Jeff, that's beautiful. Thank you
Yeah.
so much.
Yeah.
Oh, stop it here. So, all right. Yeah, we're getting some of last year's meeting here. So, it's been a lovely time with everybody. Thanks so much for coming, sharing remembrances. I didn't know Arnavaz very well, so I'm studying and I'm gaining a lot from listening to you all. Thank you. I wonder if we could have a moment of silence again before I'll put out any last minute thoughts. Okay, everybody satisfied? We'll have a moment of silence then and be on our ways to Jai Baba. So, will you join me in 3 Avatar Meher Baba Ki Jays? Avatar
Meher Baba
Meher Baba
Ki
Ki Jai.
Avatar Meher Baba
Avatar Meher Baba Ki Jai. Avatar Meher Baba Ki Jai.
Wonderful.
Hey, Baba.
Thank you
Beautiful
all.
job, Betty.
Jai Baba, that was great.
Baba.
It made my day.